Good afternoon, Chef Kevin Belton here. Now, today we're going to delve into a subject that I don't do a lot of, and we're talking about baking. My wife, Monica, is behind the camera, so if you hear her voice correct me, or you see the camera go up and down or sideways saying I'm wrong, that's because she does all the baking. I do a lot of the cooking, but she is great at baking. And you know, something that we should have in our pantries now. Now, don't run out to the store now, but next time you go to the store, you might want to get all-purpose flour. You might want to keep some non-fat dry milk that can be reconstituted. You might want to get baking powder or baking soda. Right now, in the grocery stores, since so many people are home, it's hard to find yeast. And yeast helps activate and blooms with the sugar that's in the recipes. And you know, if you don't have yeast, I want to show you a couple of one recipe that you can do a yeast-free bread. Matter of fact, I'm going to post two recipes that doesn't need yeast. One is going to be a flatbread. The other is going to be a beer bread. All right. Now, I'm trying to remember this so I get it right. Okay. All-purpose flour, that is a mixture of hard and soft grains blended together. When you see bread flour, that is all hard grain flour. And then some recipes will call for wheat flour along with the bread flour. Now the wheat flour is the entire kernel that is ground up. So I hope that helps, all right? Pretty much around here, we always use just all-purpose flour because that's what we have. Now, if you also might want to keep in the pantry self-rising flour. I knew there was one I was forgetting. The self-rising flour basically has baking powder in it and a little salt. That's what's in self-rising flour. Pretty much keep this in mind. Baking soda spreads, baking powder rises. So that's why in baking, a lot of the baking, it calls for baking powder because it'll rise. Now, this first recipe I want to do for you, this is a nice butter beer bread recipe. And they have options. You can add cheese to it. I'm starting off in the bowl with 3 cups of all-purpose flour. Here, I have a tablespoon of baking powder. I have a teaspoon of fine grained salt. And I'm using a ½ cup of brown sugar. Now, I'm going to tell you why I'm using the brown sugar. This recipe normally calls for a ¼ cup of honey. I didn't have any honey. I used all the honey up. So instead of running to the grocery store, especially now when we shouldn't be running out, I substituted the brown sugar. So instead of using honey in this, I'm using brown sugar. But you can do this recipe with honey, or if you want, use the brown sugar. And of course, we're going to use a little bit of beer in here. And oh, Dixie beer. It's back, baby. So let me get this in and start getting this mixed up. You know, it's so nice to have local products back, like Dixie beer and all. And you know, while I'm breaking up the brown sugar in here, I grew up watching Justin Wilson. And Justin used to always tell a story. So since Dixie beer is back thanks to the Bensons, I want to tell you a story about Boudreaux and Thibodeau. You know, they come from down there in like Gaydon, Louisiana, which is southwest of Lafayette. They came to New Orleans. They got a job at the brewery, you know, and they were Tess's. And so finally, one day, you know, Boudreaux and Thibodeau always together. Thibodeau, he goes back home, and he goes to Boudreaux's house and knocks on the door. And he says, Marie, come to the door. She said, oh, hey, Thibodeau, how you doing, Chef? And she says, wait, where's my Boudreaux? He says, Marie, I got some bad news. Your Boudreaux, he dead. Oh, Thibodeau, how did he die? He drowned. Oh, my poor Boudreaux. She said, Thibodeau, telling me he didn't suffer. Marie, I don't think he suffered too much because he got out to go 3 times from that vat of beer to go to the bathroom, so I don't think he suffered much. All right, ta-da! All right, if I could get the camera turned around to show you the face that Monica is making at me right now, it's priceless. Now, oh, I was preheating the oven at 350. That's what you hear, that little beep that just went off. Basically, I'm going to get the beer in. This is 12 ounces of beer in this particular recipe, all right? And I'm just going to work this together, getting the sides. I'm going to show you once I get this together a little bit. And you know, if I can make bread, all of you at home can make bread. You know, I have a great teacher here. Monica teaches me great. She also lets me know when I'm doing something wrong, which is also good. But see, we just want to work this together until it all kind of clumps up and lumps together. Can you see that? We just wanted that to all just kind of clump together there. Now, what I've done, I've taken a half a cup of butter, okay? I've melted in the microwave. I put half the butter in the pan and swirled it all around to get all around the sides and all. We're going to take our dough and just dump it right into the pan. Now, keep it right there. Just kind of press it so it gets in the sides. And depending on if you put a lot, I tried to put half the amount of butter in, but if you put more in, it may come up, but that's okay. The other nice thing with this particular recipe, if you wanted to, you could put in shredded cheese. A little shredded cheese in this bread will be really, really nice, okay? So just kind of get that spread out. Let's get that off the back of the spoon, down here into the corners. All right, there we go. That's good. Let me just wash this dough off my hand. Now, can you guess where that other butter is going? Okay, we called it a beer butter bread. Here we go. We're going to take the butter and just pour it right over the top. You can brush it over the top. You can just pour it over the top. Boom. That's in. 350 degrees. This needs to bake for about 40 to 50 minutes. Take a knife or a toothpick, see if it comes out clean, and there you go. Nice and simple. When this comes out of the oven, I like to put it on a wire rack and let it cool about 10-15 minutes, okay? And there's nothing like warm bread with some butter. Oh, baby. Now, the next thing I want to do to you is use a bread machine. Now, this is more Monica's speed. And in doing my research and learning so I could tell you all this right, the bread machines, you know, they pretty much are simple. They come with directions about if you want the white bread, French bread, or whole wheat, whatever time you can program it. They're fairly simple to program. They pop open. Inside here is actually where the bread bakes, okay? And you notice, if you can see in there, there's a little paddle down in there, all right? Now, what's important about making bread in a bread machine is the fact that we talked about the yeast earlier. We don't want the yeast and the salt to come in contact with each other. Remember, yeast helps it bloom, and the way it blooms is with the sugar. The salt that's in the recipe helps the yeast not to overbloom, so it de-blooms it a little bit. I know it. Oh, that face is looking at me again, gang, all right? So the yeast with the sugar blooms, and the salt keeps it from blooming too much. That's the basic way. So when you get a bread machine, it's very important that you do add the ingredients in the order the recipe says. That's very important. Now, I don't know the names of the machines, but there are a couple of machines that work differently, that all you have to do is reverse the order of ingredients, okay? Just reverse order of ingredients in a couple of machines. I forget their names, but here we're starting off with 3/4 cups lukewarm water, all right? I have 2.5 tablespoons of butter, and I let it get soft. 1 egg. And you can see how we're layering for a reason, okay? I have 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt, Now we have 3 cups of flour. So now we're going to get our flour in. And if I can get this in and not make a mess. Y'all heard that grunt. I know I'm making a mess. But you can see by putting the flour in now what's happening. The flour is going to cover up the salt. Okay? So to make sure, when we put it in the machine and it starts to knead, they're going to come in contact, but that's fine then. But we don't want them to come in contact now. All right, there we go. All right? Got our flour in there. Of course, you know, can you tell I learned to cook from mother and grandmother? I can't help but clean as I go. I like to write up the little gradon. 1/4 cup. This is the dried instant milk. 1/4 cup of it. And now we're going to take our yeast and get our yeast on the top. Now, with the yeast, sometimes it sticks, so I'm always told to always shake it, tap it down. Don't just cut into it. All right. We'll just cut that open. We're going to put our yeast right on top. Now, look how simple that is. All we have to do now is put this down in the machine, plug it in, and turn it on. So in it goes, a little bit of a twist, and that's it. Close it, press the button. After we have to plug it in first. All right, and then we'll have our loaf of bread cooking here. Now, I have some, of course, that I baked earlier. And of course, Monica says, you have to make this bread a couple of times just in case it doesn't come out right. But let me show you how pretty it came out. Now, this is the one from the bread machine. And this is just a white loaf of bread. If you notice, you're going to have that little hole in the bottom from the paddle, because when it bakes, you're going to have that little hole there, all right? And with your bread machines, read the directions in your bread machine to know how big a loaf it makes, okay? Whether you're doing a half loaf, a full loaf, or 1.5 times a loaf. I think that's the sizes. I'm not really sure. But read the directions on the bread machine so you don't overfill it, because what happens when it's baking, it'll not only stick to the glass, but it'll come out and actually get to the sides, and that's really hard to clean, okay? So here, look at this. Let's just take a knife, give this a nice little cut. Look at that. And you know, one of the differences with the flours, bread flour and all-purpose flour, is just the texture. That's the only thing that's going to change is the texture. Here is our bare bread. And you can see how nice that is, all right? That bare bread, imagine that with cheese in it, all right? You'd have the little pockets of cheese and all. Now, you don't want to use cube cheese. I mean, you can, but it'll leave little pockets and holes. That's why if you do the shredded, it'll be all throughout it. Now, I'm about to say something. I don't know if it's right or not, but this bread also looks great like if you could put nuts in it. Can we do that, Monty? No? Okay, she said, don't put the nuts in it. It looks like almost like kind of like the same texture of banana bread. I guess that's why I was thinking about the nuts. Don't do the nuts. Do the cheese, but not the nuts. So here we have, in the bread machine, a white loaf. Here we have no yeast, a butter beer bread. And remember, you're also going to see a recipe for flatbread that calls for no yeast. So during this time where we're being safe, and we have to be inside, yeast is hard to find at the grocery stores because so many people are baking right now. Here are a couple of options for you if you have yeast. If you don't have yeast, just, hey, get the kids involved. And if you have a bread machine and haven't used it yet, they're really simple to use. Just read the directions and the kids can help putting things in order. Hey, it keeps them occupied, then it gives them some fresh bread to eat, all right? We appreciate you watching. We want you to be safe. If you need more recipes, you can also go to www.tv.com/food for more recipes. So stay safe. Wash those hands often. Keep your distance, all right? Be safe, be well. We love you out there, and we will see you soon. For WWL TV, I'm Chef Kevin Belton. Be safe.